join. What's your name?
Shaiva.
That name?
Ilan.
All right, the orientation bit is going to be short because I have the videos, so I don't have to say it. If you have not watched the lab orientation videos, both of them, please do before the second lab especially. Dr. George Fox, whatever you call me, just don't call me Mr. Fox. That's my brother. I did have a student come in once, wasn't one of my students, but was looking for me and asked to speak to Mr. Fox, and I said, he's not here. And so of course he started walking away, and I knew what he wanted. I was just in a mood. So if you catch me in a mood, I'll pull something like that. Won't respond to it. But, and your name?
Jolie.
Name? Bradley?
Well,
Also, I believe 8 of you have done the course entry assignment. Thank you. For those who have not done the course entry assignment, you'll spend more time getting into it than actually doing it. So, by the way, what's the answer to the course entry assignment?
42.
Yeah, so please take care of that today. Just makes life easier. Name?
Jada.
Any questions before I talk about labs? Okay. All right, so, people who came in after I handed these out. You have one?
I'll need one,
Oh.
please.
All right, so I should have the lab that we'll be doing on Thursday will be available some point today or tomorrow. So if you have printer issues, I understand, I can accommodate. But I'd rather you kill the trees than me. So that's what it comes down to. I guess I don't know you well enough to start pulling lines like that, so I'll wait till the end and then I'll talk about killing trees. All right, so you will be a part of a group today. One thing to note is that the group name is whatever everyone agrees upon. All this is in the lab orientation video, but there were 4 points I just wanted to emphasize. So everyone in the group has the same group name. Do not trust that I'm going to remember who worked with whom. So it's by that I know which groups work together. And the names need to be identical. Uppercase for uppercase, space for space, symbol for symbol. It does not have to be a real word. The name that you come up with today is not the name that you have to use every single week, because there are no set groups. It might be in a different group every single week. Although, out of tradition, I mean, I assume certain people will probably work together a great deal throughout the semester, but it's not, I am not establishing groups. You will do it. What I will establish is the number of people in a group. All right, so names need to be the same for every person in the group. Data. Data needs to be the same for every person in that group. Data is that which is measured directly in the lab. So it is not, if a calculation is involved, that's not data, that's a result. Graphs are results. But the data itself need to be the same. And this is how I know what it is, what the numbers are supposed to be. I'm not hovering over every single group to know exactly what the measurement should be. So if there are 3 people in a group, and I see 3.4, 3.4, 3.5, I'm assuming that they are correct. Becomes especially important if you redo a trial that everybody is aware of it. If you change the name of the group, please make sure everyone in your group is aware of the change. Also, if a person is, in today's example, you're going to drop a ball, the ball is going to bounce to a certain height, somebody's going to read it, write it down. The person who's dropping it probably is not writing down the data as he or she goes. So that means the person's going to then have to copy off of somebody else what the numbers were that were called out. No problem with that, it's data, there's no calculations involved. Please make sure that you can read other people's handwriting. What number is that?
9.
Sure it's not a 4? Seven or 1?
1.
For some people, it's a 7. So there are things that get sort of messed up when you're copying down someone else's. And so if it's 3 point that, and the other person writes down 3.9, and the other person looks at that and writes down 3.4, I have to try to figure out what that is. And so I'm going to look throughout the page for some other number that's either a 9 or a 4 and try to figure out how this person writes the number. If I cannot tell, I will go to whoever's closest to me and I say, hey, what is this number? And that will be the tiebreaker. So if I decide that that's a 9, then I would circle that, write MD, where majority disagrees. If there's 4 people in the group, I decide that's a 9. Well, there is no majority. Everybody loses a point. So please make sure that you can read the handwriting and that you are in sync. I have had some groups that before they break up, they go through all the numbers that were measured directly just to make sure everybody is in sync. Results, on the other hand, might be different, depending on how people round it. Do not assume that your lab partner did it correctly. Please don't. It's in the video, but it still pains me. There were 4 people doing the calculations. One person had a different answer than the other 3. So that one person said, oh, you must have done it right, changed what she had gotten. And it turns out she was the only one who did it right. Everyone else was wrong. They made the same mistake. Do not assume your lab partners did it correctly. If I see the same stupid mistake, and I have seen this, it's painful. If I see the same stupid mistake from everyone in the group, then I'm thinking, what are the odds that they all made the exact same mistake? And then it comes down to a matter of, all right, Does this fall in the category of cheating? Don't cheat. The other issue in this generally comes from, I had another teacher who didn't care, or another teacher who wanted us to do it a certain way. Don't repeat units. So if I have length, whatever I put in parentheses is assumed automatically to come after the numbers. You don't need to rewrite it. So if it's 4.7 meters, all I write down is 4.7 because it's already understood to be meters. If you put meters here, then you're saying it's 4.7 meters squared, which would not be a length anymore. So don't repeat the units. Now in this lab, it goes sideways, so like drop height, centimeters, and then you'll have numbers out here. So what I'm expecting is just the number. You're not necessarily using 40, but I just threw 40 as an example, so it's understood that's 40 centimeters. Questions to hear? You haven't gathered in Microsoft, then all I'm trying to do, there we go. For some reason, it access the apps, it's not clicking on the left-hand side like it is every other computer I've worked on. They stuck it in the middle. And yes, I'm blaming Microsoft. All right, questions to hear before I talk about graphs? I am expecting every one of you to do your own graph. Even though you'll have the same numbers, the same data, you don't necessarily have the same results because of rounding, and the graphs should look a lot alike, but sometimes it's very clear that one person did it and the other people printed it off. Please don't do that. Do your own graph. You can compare it, I have no problem with that. And if you get very different numbers, try to figure out why. But, yes?
Does it matter how we round? Because I've had classes that prefer we round a certain way and others that don't care.
Round properly, you're not truncating. So, and this also shows up more in 110 than other classes. If it's 37.469 and you're rounding off to that space, I expect it to be 7. So you round off to the nearest. Too many times I just see people, oh, well, that's as far as the one goes, so I'm just going to chop off that last number. Don't. Is that sort of the thing that you were talking about?
Kind of. So, like, I was thinking, like, some teachers I've had, they like to have it rounded to a certain decimal place, or like chemistry, we
Okay.
have to do the
Significant figures? Bring back some nightmares?
Oh yeah.
Or fond memories, I should say.
No.
Sweet dreams. All right, so
Waking nightmares.
I am not picky on significant figures. That's primarily a chemistry thing. So I am going to subject other classes to that, but not 110. So if you particularly love significant figures and you want to stick to it, go for it. But I don't care.
So just kind of like whatever you round to, make sure that it actually works out. So like if you round to that 10th figure, like if you round it to 0.4, it'd be 0.5 because the 6 comes after.
Yes.
And so forth.
Yes. And if it's a 5 afterwards, so if I had 37.45, and it actually is 4.5, there's not numbers out here that you just ignored. Either round up, round down, round to the even, round to the odd, be consistent whatever you're doing. Excel will round up, but I was taught one thing, Excel does a different thing. Just be consistent. And usually I can't tell, but there are times in which I can tell that, oh, they rounded up here, it was like they rounded down there. They rounded up here when they should have rounded down. If they're going by that rule, they're not being consistent. Other questions? And again, in a video, but which one is it? That one? Yes, it is. I'm going to go through making a graph based upon history. Some of you will pick this up very quickly and be able to make perfect graphs from throughout the course. Some of you will struggle. If you are in doubt, please feel free to send me a graph and say, is this right? Now, I can't verify the numbers unless you send those to me, but I can at least tell you if the formatting is correct. This is not a creative exercise. So in this particular lab, you got drop height, and apparently all caps. Drop height and bounce height. And then you'll have certain numbers here. So for the bounce height, you're going to do 5 trials for each drop height. And what you're plotting is the average. So it's actually average bounce height. And I'll just make up numbers here. Sure, why not? All right. Now, in the lab, in step number 5, by the way, and it is up here in notes, if you see the asterisk, it does not need to be done right then and there during the lab. The asterisk means you can do it outside of lab time. But it says plot a graph, bounce height versus drop height. So, that is the title of your graph. Every single one of you will have the exact same title. Again, not a creative writing exercise. It'll be bounce height versus drop height. So I'm going to insert a chart. I want a scatter plot, and I want the one without any lines on it. My title is, oh, well, actually, we're going to come over here to quick layout. That'll save me a little bit of time. All right, so bounce height versus drop height. My axis title over here, this is the bounce height. This is the first name here, where it says bounce height, that is dependent on the drop height, and the vertical axis is for the dependent. So this is bounce height, space, parenthesis, units, close parenthesis. Therefore, this one is drop height. Oops. Now, there's a mistake there because that should be capitalized, height. I don't have to have units in the title. Matter of fact, formally, you should not have units in the title unless the units are of any importance here. As in you were doing some test based on the units. I don't need the legend if I have only one plot on it. You do need the legend if you have 2, which I believe you will. And then, once I have it, I right click, add trend line. Linear is default. I want to keep it that. Display equation, display r squared value. Put this someplace where it's easy to see. And that is a legitimate graph. Now, in this particular one, you're going to have 2 sets of data. So let's assume that you have the same drop heights. So we've got a bounce height 2. This one. So I need to add, select data, add the X values are my drop heights, my Y values, that. Oh, what O? XL. So I have another set of data here. Now I need to have a legend. And so I probably shouldn't have gotten rid of the other one. So let's go back over to chart design, quick layout. So now I have those. Notice my other line disappeared because Microsoft looked deep into my heart and said, you really don't want that line there. You were just joking before. All right, so I have 2 lines here. Now, it's a bit of a muddle, so I need to actually move these. And I know the one with the negative slope, that negative number right there, is going to apply to this blue dotted line. So I put that near the blue. And this one, put near the orange. And there we go. Now, if you're putting it out in black and white, then you'll need to somehow differentiate these 2 lines here, or the sets of data. So if I click on that, then I have to remember how they do it. Let's see,